So luckily this was originally a 20-minute talk, so hopefully I can do that. So I'm going to go a little fast. All questions can go outside.
Don't do that, I could do with the time to finish my slides.
Okay, so Matt has explicitly requested for me to go over time. That's right here. So, and also, you know what, my transitions are going to be a little weird. I forgot about the double screen. So, anyway, so this is a talk, as some of you may or may not know, for about 5 years or so, I've been working on an idea for basically adding a new and more powerful object system to Pro 5 itself. So, those of you who don't know me, CPAN ID, my GitHub, my Twitter, it's me, that's the date. It was only a half pint, so it's really little. So actually I want to kind of point out that this is actually an obsession of mine going back a long, long way. In 2002, I got my first job as a pro programmer at a company called Infinity Interactive, and I read this book, and I thought, hey, Pro needs like a standard library or something like that. So I created that with the II framework. It included something close but not quite roles, abstract classes, sort of an object construction protocol, all this stuff. Very poorly designed, but it was there. Next, I got involved in Pugs, 2005, which was inspired by this book. And I specifically did the meta-object protocol. Some of the early meta-object protocol work, you guys have gone way beyond me. But this was a book that I studied for that. In 2006, I made Moose. Moose started out initially like this. I had this nice little mop, class mop, that sat on top of Pro 5, and I had this thin little layer of Moose syntax. It turned into that. And then we actually incorporated this into Moose, so it's all kind of gone. So in 2011, I decided to, let's start fresh. So again, I wanted the mop separate from the core. I thought I don't want my pretty little mop to get messed up. And I drew a line in blood. I said, never the two shall meet. Didn't work. Daring attempt, didn't end well. I then got distracted for a little while. Some of you may or may not know about this. This was my attempt at re-implementing, I called it an ultra-modern Perl 5, which was basically Perl 5 without all the crap, and Perl 6 with a lot less of the crap. And I did it in Scala. It was fun, but that was all of us. I felt guilty, so I did another version of the P500. This one worked out better. Same basic idea, but this one I said, okay, I'm going to let it make some connections here or there. The reality of the connections was closer to this. And at the very core was sort of a very hard to swallow lozenge of excess. So it was a nice idea. It actually, I was very happy with this prototype because we ironed out a bunch of syntax issues. We went through a whole bunch of crap. We ported a whole bunch of modules while not changing their test suite, and they all ran. It was very nice. But the core and the code was a little bit of a mess. So I started doing this. I caught myself some excess. The result of that is this. All pieces. I was really good at seg faulting. That was something I put on my resume. So in 2015, I actually started working at Booking.com. I fled the US, which now seems like a really good idea at the time.
We thought they chased her out.
What's that?
We thought they chased her out.
That may happen. So I just as a joke, this was the name of the directory, and then I just uploaded it to GitHub. So it was that. But this was I took a different approach with this one. It wasn't inspired by this book, but I would like to point out something that was, when I went to FOSDEM last year, we went to the ADA dev room, and they mentioned that object-oriented programming in ADA, does everybody know what ADA is?
Unfortunately.
Okay, yeah. It's a government language designed by the US Department of Defense, so you can imagine how elegant it is. But they said that object orientation was a design pattern in ADA. And if you know object orientation in ADA, that makes sense. The thing is, the same is true for Pro 5. If you really think about it, the thin layer that Larry added on top of Pro 5 is really just an agreed upon set of conventions, some of which happen to be enforced by the core, but not all. For instance, classes are the same thing as packages. Methods are the same things as subroutines. Inheritance is simply populating a variable. Happens to be magical, but that's fine. Beside the point. constructor is bless. I mean, this is very, very simple, very, very low level. Schemish, if you will. And everybody's favorite too, the send operator, that the rest of the world uses the dot. We use that. But those are the basic patterns. So my proposal is actually to build on top of those patterns, and I will show you, well, let me go through the patterns. So, the first idea is, so in Perl 6, or sorry, Perl 5, the state, the chosen slots of your object, who knows? You could bless whatever you want, it doesn't matter. There's no subclasses, no superclasses, nobody has any idea what's in there unless they break your encapsulation and start to look. So, and also, you can never tell that, you know, your superclass has initialized everything correctly in the right order, and your subclasses and all. It gets a little messy because we don't really track this stuff. So my proposal is to follow basically the same convention as our ISA and do our has. And all that contains is a slot name and a subroutine ref on the other side that will do the initialization. It'll make more sense later. Roles are something I'd like to introduce. So actually, these are the only two things I want to introduce: is roles and some way to define attributes in the attributes and slots of your class. Roles are just packages. Composition, same as ISA. You just put it into the does array. Put strings in the does array. It's again, it's sort of the same messy nastiness that we're all very comfortable and familiar with. Abstract methods. We already have them all the time. That's an abstract method. We don't do anything about its abstractness, but that is technically an abstract method because it will die when you try to call it. So, taking these ideas, I took my P5 mob seriously what the fuck repository and I renamed it to this, to bring it all back. So this is the design that I'm happy with. This is the design. My New Year's resolution, I was telling Matt, my New Year's resolution is to actually join P5P and wade through the proposing this and seeing what everybody says. And of course the bike shedding, et cetera, et cetera. So that's your history. Now I'm going to go through sort of the different layers. I've built this in such a way that you can strip off each of the syntactic layers to get lower and lower down to something that is basically those patterns that I just laid out here. And I'm going to take you step by step through those. And we'll stop sliding things across the screen at this point. There might be a few more. Anyway, so this is unimplemented, although I have the code to implement this, I just haven't brought it into the newest version yet. But this is my final proposal. It looks very much like Perl 6. It follows a lot of Perl 6 conventions and ideas. We have the twiggles. I'll show in a second how traits are done and everything like that, but this is the base idea. I know this one's going to be controversial, so this is not required for the rest of everything else in the stock. You will see this is just a nice to have on top of it. I figure 526 is the earliest I can possibly get it in. And we almost certainly make it experimental because we're doing that with everything, even retroactively now. But it's pretty simple. Classes are classes. No longer are classes packages. ISA, that's a word we all know. This is where I do differ from Perl 6. Instead of the is, we go to ISA. Methods have a method keyword. Yay! I waited long enough. They're in core. I don't have to worry about that now. That was going to be a pain in the ass to implement. Has for our attributes, okay? And basically you're just saying has, and then you got the signal there, and the signal is sort of a special variable. And you put what the value is on the other side. Now that's the value to be initialized to, so think of that as being wrapped in an explicit sort of subroutine closure. As you can see with the twiggles, they're usable within the methods. Now, where this can get really fun is the optimization possibilities of this. Because those are essentially lexical variables, which is a hell of a lot faster than a hash lookup. So everything after this, you'll see as we start to dig down, we go back to hashes. But this essentially would require some level of a new instance type in Perl. It's fun, we already have like 15 of them. It's okay.
Is that your 4-bit flag?
What's that?
Is that your 4-bit flag? You can't have 150.
However many fit in a 4-bit flag.
15, he just told you that.
You can assign them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Other than that, everything else is plain old Perl 5 code. So super works, everything else. So it looks a lot like Perl 6 except for the method bodies, with the exception of the twiggle stuff, is basically your standard profile. So there's other things though. You don't want to just have that. We have these other things, traits, very similar to Perl 6 here. Is RW, the type, maybe a type constraint, so similar to how Moose does things, et cetera, in there. I will leave how those are actually implemented out there because of this syntax layer, we may be able to do some nice fancy stuff. But the idea is, again, we borrow from the Perl 6 design, and we begin to add, you can begin to add in these traits that will be modifiers on your attributes. Obviously, this one's going to create an accessor, and that one's just going to make sure that anything that you try and stick in there fits the appropriate type constraint. Okay, so that's the fancy stuff. Whether it actually becomes reality, whether it actually becomes part of the Perl core, I have no clue. I will build it, and it'll end up on CPAN, and because of a lot of the work that you've done, Stefan's done on the keyword API, it can be on CPAN. It doesn't actually have to be in the core. It could be faster in the core, but it doesn't have to be. So that's the topmost layer of the MLB. Let's strip it back down one more. Okay, so maybe you don't want to wait for 526. Maybe you want to start using it now. This is actually implemented. It's rough around the edges, but this syntax layer is implemented. So it borrows from Moose. 522 is simply because subroutine signatures, if you want to use them, you can have them there. Packages are still packages, are still classes, are still whatever. This use Moxie is my sort of temporary name for what this would be, but again, like I said, this is a Moose replacement, so you do need to import this in there. But what this will do is things like it'll actually turn on subroutine signatures. It'll turn on postfix, which is a personal favorite of mine. I know it's very controversial. It'll turn on strict, it'll turn on sort of warnings. It'll do a lot of that stuff. So that boilerplate that you would normally have at the top of your class would be taken care of. Again, a lot like Moose, a lot like Mo, a lot like a lot of other variations on that. We'd use extends, which is, again, we're mimicking the Moose syntax here. That could be ISA, but then that begins to conflict with the actual ISA method, things like that. So we stick with extends. Subroutines, methods, are still the same. We haven't changed anything there. Again, if you have the subroutine signatures, but if you actually don't care about that, this will go back compat to 512. And 512 is simply because, was it 511, 6.5 or something like that, was when the keyword API stabilized, I think it was. Something along, it was somewhere in the 511 range, and so 512 was the final release that had it in it. So, and the reason I need the keyword API is because I want this and this to both run at compile time. And the simplest way to do that is to use the keyword API, do all my work during begin, and basically leave nothing in the op tree afterwards. So you can go back to 512 if you want, and then we have. Yep, so has is again, it's a keyword, but it's essentially the same as Moose. It's a function. The keyword basically just evaluates all the rest of the statement and pushes it into the thing that handles it, and it builds all that stuff. Default is obvious. That's to get the default value of the initializer. Because these are no longer twiggles, they're hash keys. So we'll use hashes there. Why not? Everybody uses hashes. Anybody who doesn't use hashes is doing something special purpose usually, or just weird, one or the other. Poe, for instance, uses array-based indices, but it does that for speed, because at the time, in like the late 90s, that was an issue. So now you might say, well, wait a second, where's all the other cool stuff? I don't want to just have defaults. Well, you also can do all this other stuff. This is, again, similar to Moose, building all this stuff, but how it does this is different. In Moose, it stuffed it all into the mop and made a big giant mess, and then so we had all sorts of extensions and all these crazy things that made it very, very difficult to optimize, because we basically left too much freedom out there. So we decided, we discovered this in a previous prototype, that we could actually do this very much like Perl 6 does, in the sense that if there's a function in scope that matches the key, then we call that function with first the meta class, then the attribute meta object, and then whatever other arguments that you might have passed into there. So those are the arguments. We're dispatching based on read-o, read-write. Add a method. Oh fuck, we don't understand that. We pull it. So it's very easy for you to extend the mop by simply writing functions that operate on meta objects. So it's close to what Perl 6 does. Not exactly, but it's borrowing the same idea. But it proves to be a very powerful and very useful extension mechanism. basically does is this. So it injects this in, because we're doing the keywords, we can do all sorts of shit at the beginning. So it essentially does this. So it creates a new meta class, passes it in, gets the attribute, read, write. One thing I'd like to point out, mop class new. You might be thinking, well, didn't we create a meta class for that package already somewhere, blah, 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 blah. Yes, we did. But we're going to create another one. They're all going to be the same because no data is actually stored in the meta classes. All that data is actually stored inside Perl, and I'll show you that and show you exactly how in a little bit. But just understand that if you want to get a meta class, you just create one, and it will give you the quote-unquote handle into the class. If you want to treat something as a role, mop role new. If you want to treat something as a class, mop class new. There is no distinction. Any distinction I ever made in the previous ones always turned out to be artificial and hindrances and stuff like that. If you want to view a package as a class, great. If you want to view it as a role, great. Do what the fuck you want. This is Perl. Enough rope to shoot your foot. So, going back, and again, I said this before, the default is there already. We need that. But everything else is just a trait that's built on top of that. So you might say, well, that's cool, but you know, I'm not on 512, you know, I'm on 510. So let's strip away another layer in here. At this layer, basically the entire mop API is 510 compatible. And it's only 510 for this, basically, unit check. And I think one other thing, but no, unit check is the only thing. So what we do here, let's see, 510, we got to use the mop. We create our classes. We can do subclassing here. So we have the mop object subclass. Finalizer, the glue is not showing up very well. Is it showing? Can you guys see it? Yeah. Finalizers are the reason why we need unit check. Okay, so you can basically say, and this was one of the major things we kept running into with Moose and with other things, how do you know when a class is done? When is it finished? And it's basically only finished when you, the programmer, says it is. So you have to say, set closed. And then I will know, the mop will know, and anybody who wants to write anything that does any optimization will know, okay, the programmer has promised not to touch this anymore. Now, whether somebody else comes in and touches it or not, that's an entirely different story. But you have agreed to say, I won't let it be changed. And like I said, the unit check runs the finalizers. You don't technically need that. You could do that at the end of your begin time, but really if you think about it, it's better to do that in unit check, which, for those of you who don't know, unit check is the end of a compilation unit. So Perl compiles something, and at the very last moment before it begins to run anything that wasn't in the begin check or in an init block, it runs the unit check. That's the proper place to finalize your classes, because other things may want to do stuff to your classes in the meantime. So, methods, obviously we're just adding closures into there. We do stuff to make sure that they have the proper names attached to the underlying data structures, all that kind of stuff. This is a weirdness on this level, because we're actually auto-creating packages in the background. We can't do super, because super is a compile time constant that must have been defined, or must have been used within a package for it to all work.
Just use next method.
That didn't work either. Don't worry, a lot of there's some weird yeah. What about here? Add attribute, simple stuff, very easy. Traits. So I'm going a little fast here. Traits would be the exact same thing, but if you look at it right there, that's what we did before. Okay, we just happen to have a meta class around for it. But you can do the same thing with traits. You could use the same traits from the other layer. And the nice thing about this is that if you don't like my syntax, make your own. It's fine. Make it as back compatible as you want. You can. I basically, I think it was waiting for Zephram's talk. I sketched this out. Okay, so if you wanted to have your own way of doing things, you can do it. You can build on top of them up to make your own syntaxes or your own variations of classes or set up your own rules or something like that. All you have to have is 510 and my stuff. Now, this is where it kind of gets fun, and I didn't even realize this until I actually started running Perl version over the code base. The core of this is 5.6 compatible. Okay? So,
Made Reba happy?
what?
You made Reba happy?
Yeah, I know, and he's not even here, too. He's finishing his full pint. didn't we actually even use 5.6 still? Matt, come on. I know you do.
No.
No? Really?
I support 581 plus, and then occasionally crazy people have 5.6 patches, and usually I don't break them.
So these slides are mostly for Reba, but you guys can share with them. Packages and packages. That looks familiar, right? We've done that before. Inheritance of attribute values. It works, right? It works. Methods are methods. Super works. Has begin. Okay, so if you remember all the other stuff, that's basically the same thing. We're just doing it in there. And this is why I say it doesn't matter how many times you create a mock class new object, because this is where the data is stored. In these things. So it's in the package already. It's stuffed into Perl itself. So you can just basically treat these things however you want. Hash keys. Okay, so you may say, well, hey, wait a second, that whole hash stuff is actually kind of restricted. No, bullshit, it's not. You can get a lot of stuff out of it. A required attribute. It must be set by the constructor because that initializer is going to be run in the constructor. And it's going to die and say it's required. Okay, so got that there. You can pass the value into the constructor. So that's basically an optional default right there. I can pass in a 1 if I want to. Or I can just say, no, I intend to use this slot, but I've got nothing for it right now. We'll just stick it on that. Yeah, then inheritance, yay! And you have to do the inheritance first because you want these other things to override. And that's how you would override something. And I should have put a version of that in there. But if you think about it, if I defined gender down here as something different, it would just override. And there you go. You have inheritance plus attribute override. And then closed, because you should close your classes. You should fucking tell people, I'm done. Don't touch it anymore, please. And also do whatever you need to on the internals. So, all right, 21 minutes. What's my actual time here? How late was I?
Keep going.
How much more time do you need for your slides?
You're already at 10 first, you should have 10 minutes of your actual slot left.
Okay. So, with the exception of the really fancy syntax layer, everything else is implemented. If you want this in 5.6, you don't get the mop API, but you can just mop object, which provides the constructor on there. You don't get roles with this unless you do it manually, and you don't get the mop, but mop object is a single file. Everything you need from it is in one file, which means if you want to do a fat pack or something like that, where you basically ship this code that has these new patterns in it, and you want to send it out, you don't have to include the entire full mop in there, you can just grab mop object. So, now, so the very front of this was not implemented, and now the very back of this is not implemented. This is something I probably shouldn't do, which, volunteers, welcome please. I would love, I mean, this is fun, yay, Perl level API, blah, 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 but wouldn't it be nice if we had this shit in Access as well? Wouldn't it be nice if you could bind all your C libraries or something like that and never have to call out to Perl? If we had a full syntax, or we had the full capabilities in Access. And here's that. Everybody read it? Good. Okay, yeah, I was worried that you wouldn't be able to see it, sorry, but you can see it. So I'll walk you through it just in case you can't read it. So that basically says include Perl mop, Perl underscore mop.h. So you need your header file, right? C. Then we set up two classes, the point and the point 3D. We also have to have a handle for a mop object, so that was there. That's inheritance going on in there. It's basically stuffing things into the superclass. Those are the two methods, the implementation of them up there. You can see it right there. That's adding the methods into, I mean, it's C. You can get the idea of the line count. It's going to be so. And these are comments, I don't know if those are showing very well. But that's adding the methods into the object, which basically just wraps it in a little bit of extra information so that we can adjust the C function to bind it to a CV and make it accessible to Perl itself. And I can't even read this now. Oh, that's a super call. So we get super back now that we're at the access level. We have to do, enter and leave and all that kind of crap too, but it works. That's the attributes. If you look all the way up there, that's the initializer, which basically just does excess return with a 0. Very simple. And then that binds it all into that and sets up all the necessary stuff. Oh, that's accessing the slots of the object. So you have that in there, because those are the methods. I think that closes the class, maybe? It's getting too small for me to read. But anyway, that's that. That's a bit of a dream. We'll see if that one actually comes. Let's see if I can find somebody who knows C well enough to help me with that. But there's plenty of people who work, so hopefully that. But anyway, that is it. Questions?
One general architectural shape thing. Go back to the 5-6 slide. You had everything in begin blocks.
Yes.
But it's not evident from this example why they need to be at begin time.
It is technically not necessary, no. But it's nicer if everything is done at the end of compilation and nothing is done during runtime. This was one of the major problems that we had with Moose, is that we start basically building classes with Moose at the beginning of the runtime, which means other shit could be happening. And things get really messy. And Moose always had to assume that the class was always still open. So it could never do anything to optimize anything that it had done. Anything that it does do to optimize stuff, it has to be ready to rip it out and do it again. So we ended up with a lot of stuff in that beginning of runtime, and that was really, it didn't work very well. So yes, you're right. Technically, it doesn't have to be in begin. But it's nicer to have it there. It's a proper place to put it.
It's more that it's then going to run those before it even notices the names of any methods that you're defining within the package. So the is a and their has have been now set up before you see the word sub clear.
Right.
And it just, so you're not making any use of those inside clear as far as I can tell. So,
No.
yeah.
It's technically not necessary, but again, it's that whole thing, like we should set the whole class up at begin time, and if we're going to run any finalizers, we should do it in the unit check phase, so that by the time you enter the runtime, everything's done. The whole thing is done, everything's set up, everything's been optimized, or whatever. We're going to rewrite method bodies with excess or something like that. We could do that, but we'd want to do that before you actually enter the runtime.
Stupid pedantic comment. If you go back to the first slide where you have the finalizer calls at the end of which class, it's like way at the beginning. That's it, basically. So they're not really finalizers. Finalizers are object level methods reserved for destruction. You need a better name. I work with them and he's my boss, so it's okay.
Yes and no. I mean, attributes is a bad choice of words as well, because Perl already has an attribute thing.
Yeah.
It's fucked up and everybody hates it and the API is shit, but it's used and it's there. So yeah, there's some, I fully expect when I put this out to P5P that those things get worked through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're prejudiced by your previous work in thinking that that's what a finalizer has to be. That's
No,
what
I made sure to look this up on Wikipedia before I
Okay. Hold on, I have to edit something. So.
Yeah, so have you re-implemented Moose on top of this, and how does it compare in runtime?
Funny you should ask that. So we discussed this on the plan.
Oh,
You're right. He's not a plan, I promise. So yeah, it probably wouldn't be able to do the entirety of Moose. Moose makes, so I actually wanted to avoid anybody feeling the need to subclass any of the meta object stuff. And in order to do that, I had to provide a different extension mechanism, which is the traits. So right there, we lose a lot of the really crazy stuff that Moose provided. But having seen that stuff go out to the wild and having dealt with some of it, Andreas, you remember what I'm talking about. We had some fucked up stuff at work. Do you remember what the actual speed was after we fixed it? So we had Moose classes that we had made immutable. And a Moose class, if you make it immutable, it replaces a lot of things like the constructor and stuff with optimized generated code versions of it. It makes your class significantly faster at runtime with Moose. And so we found a class that was used all over the place that wasn't marked as immutable. And do you remember what the speed up was?
Yes, like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, it was huge.
You saved a lot of money.
What's that?
You saved a lot of money.
Yeah, we saved a lot of money. So I'm sorry, I don't remember what the actual question was. Go fancy.
I think going into politics. You said has is a keyword.
Yes.
I have existing loops code that adds attributes by calling has in the loop because they're all really similar. So it's
Yeah,
a
it
basic
wouldn't
boilerplate. Doesn't mean you can't do that anymore.
I don't think that would work. It could probably be me.
It would be the equivalent, you wouldn't be using the has keyword probably,
Yeah.
but
You
since
call them up.
it's equivalent to some procedural code in the begin block, and you could explicitly write the begin block with that procedural code in the loop.
Yeah,
Like
you can just switch to calling an attribute in the loop, which is, I mean, yeah, the only,
Which is all really Has is doing in the long run anyway.
right, the only really good reason to run has in a loop is if you're using the cut down, cut and shut of an excuse for an object system called mode, which then doesn't have that attribute because I shored off the entire meta protocol thing to his code.
Yeah, oh, so the answer here, will this replace moves? Not fully,
No, that wasn't the question.
but it will replace move. Move shouldn't be necessary after this, because this is faster. It's not quite faster yet, you cheat.
Well, of course I cheat. That's why I win.
It's my understanding that moo does literally nothing unless you load it into a class. So if you just say Perl-m moo, it basically just returns.
Pretty much.
For the most part, yeah. So if I do Perl-moxie, which was my replacement, E1, it's a little slower than Perl-m moo E1, but that's only because he cheats. And probably in the long run, they would probably be fairly close, I think, in general. It's a fuck of a lot faster than moves. That I can say for sure. So anyway, but hopefully that's sort of, yeah, basically I don't intend to re-implement moves, but people can get fairly close. So definitely.
Yeah, so in an earlier slide, using super, so I was wondering how does it behave if you're using a method resolution order that's not default, such as C3?
Yeah, so in that case, you probably want to be using next method for that. So I don't try and do anything fancy with that. I try and build upon what's there in Perl already. So, good. Want to start now?
I did finish my slides while we were taking questions.
Okay. All right, that's it then.